The Friday Rugby Preview on Borders Rugby Radio with Stuart Cameron.
Hello and welcome to the very first Friday Rugby Preview of the new year, and after 4 weeks of no action in the leagues due to weather and holidays, it's good to see that rugby will be played tomorrow as we go into the business side of the season. Well, I'm Stuart Cameron. With me this week is Dale Clancy, previewing the weekend's fixtures involving Borders teams, and we certainly have a fixture card packed with intriguing matches, and we'll be hearing from the teams who can't wait to get back on the playing fields again. So welcome, Dale. Have a good Christmas.
Yeah, busy time. It seems like so long ago since we were actually watching any sort of rugby. You know, in terms of the Premiership, obviously the Waverley Cup's been in between that as well. But obviously the weather beforehand kind of put a paid to the competitive action, but it's nice to have a little break, but certainly looking forward to seeing rugby getting back underway again.
I was going to say, because you missed the Waverley Cup.
Yes, I did, yes. I've got more of a kind of family plantation as opposed to a family tree, so you have to get about everybody and make sure that you see everybody through the festive period, because it just gets busy again, you know, especially as the rugby ramps up after the new year. So it's all guns blazing now and towards the end of the season. And
of course you saw the results, which was a swing from 63-15 to Melrose to 43-15 to Gala.
Oh, total surprise. I think even when I looked at the squads on paper, Gala came out strong. I still thought Melrose had a reasonably strong squad. I thought, you know, maybe resting a few key bodies because they have an eye on promotion from National 1 with a huge game coming up this weekend. But I think to get a result like that for Gala breathes a little bit of life back into their season again. I think it was a really good result for them. It obviously shows a little bit of that new coach bounce as well, but it remains to be seen. They go back into National League action this weekend, and you know it's great to beat your bitter rivals by such a high scoreline, but they need to put it up again this weekend.
Well, let's begin with our main commentary game tomorrow, which is in National 1. It's Melrose against Ayr, third versus second, and as crucial a game for both teams as you could imagine. Could have been closer, of course, with 2 points deducted for Melrose, but I mean, it really is tight at the top.
Yeah, you look at the table there, and Gala have obviously been cut away now, but you've got Kelso, Ayr and Melrose in the chasing pack. And when we get into this stage of the season, it's about, you know, maintaining that momentum that you've built in the first half. Kelso obviously out of the equation for this fixture, obviously, but it means that Melrose now have a chance to, you know, at least try and overtake Ayr or get a little bit closer to put the pressure on both of those teams, because in terms of their momentum, the big win against Gala, you know, just end of November, you know, that was a huge result for them. They've put themselves back into contention for promotion, and you feel that Melrose need to win this game. I think it's one of those ones again that if they lose this, you would imagine it's a two-horse race and it's a matter of Ayr and Kelso and who can go up from this division. But it's a huge game, and we've seen loads and loads of games in the past between Melrose and Ayr. There have been tasty battles, there have been arguments between the coaches, the committee, and there's been great battles on the field as well. Over the last 10, 15 years, it's been a really big fixture in Scottish rugby, and it's equally as important now.
There's still 10 games, 50 points at stake, and games like, for instance, Kelso going up to Highland and a few other ones as well. So, and it's interesting as well, because you weren't the only one to say that, because Ewan Dodds said himself that, you know, it's now all about seeing if they can affect who actually gets promoted.
Yeah, it is a lot, but I know my maths isn't my strong point, but there's 17 points difference between where they are to Kelso. Now you think of that swing, are you expecting Kelso, Ayr and Melrose to give up that amount of points in that time? It's just too big. You know, stranger things have happened, but then can you say that about Highland and Biggar? Highland are only a point behind, Biggar 3 points behind. It's far too much in terms of league rugby. Because you look at the bottom of that league as well, likes of Stirling County, GHK, Watsonians, Grammar and Stumel, they're teams that you would expect those teams at the top three to be beaten. And there's 25 points, 30 points there already. So there's not a lot of wiggle room. I think it's, you know, I would like to see Gala start to build that momentum again, because I was really enjoying watching them play rugby over the last couple of seasons. It's just maybe not worked out. They've not been able to get over the hangover from last year. But it is probably looking at maybe now building towards the restructuring in obviously next year when it kicks off again. But there's still a lot of rugby obviously to be played.
And of course they're all playing each other.
Yeah, and it's always, I think, because we've got so many teams in national rugby for our region, it's great. But we're always bad at cutting each other's throats, and we say it time and time again. But that's what makes the Borders rugby so unique, and it makes it so interesting. Kelso have done remarkably well, because they're one of the teams that over the last 20 years, you can say, have probably lost out the most than any other team, because, they've been in relegation battles, been promoted, relegated, and sometimes they come off second best when they're in these tight battles, but they've held form. They've been remarkable so far this season, but there's still, as you say, a lot of rugby left to play.
OK, well, let's get into the business end then. Let's hear from Bert Grigg, head coach of Melrose, who are, of course, unbeaten at home.
Yeah, we welcome Ayr along to the Greenyards for what will be our first game of 2023, and what is a pretty important game for both clubs, both pushing for promotion, looking to keep that pressure up on Kelso, and it's a massive game for both of us. But look, boys have prepped really well over the last couple of weeks after the Boxing Day game. A bit of a bump in the road, but boys have had a positive reaction to that, and it's just made everyone a bit more determined to work that little bit harder and make sure that we're still in that promotion race come the end of the season. A couple of boys back from injuries, Rory Lindsay in the back row, which is going to be good to see. Rory's been a pretty constant figure in our back row for most of the season until he was injured in the game at home against Gala. Yeah, looking forward to having him back involved, along with club captain David Colvins, recovered from a knee injury, which has meant that we get a little bit more experience in our back three on Saturday, which I think is going to be a massive boost for us in such a tight game, or what I'm expecting to be such a tight game versus Ayr. So yeah, looking forward to it come Saturday, and we'll see where we are.
Bert Grigg, and with hardly any rugby, it's given players obviously a time to recover from injuries.
Yeah, it's given them a bit of time to, replenish their squads again, get a bit of time out with the rugby field, and it's been quite an unusual long period out, because we've had that 4 weeks. Although obviously Melrose, some players have had a little bit of rugby under their belt with the Waverley Cup game, but certainly getting Rory Lindsay back in the squad's a great addition. The two Canadians, which have obviously been fighting well for the Melrose cause, are not going to be able to be continuing with Melrose, and bringing somebody like Rory Lindsay back into the back row is a great weapon to bring back, because I've been really impressed with him over the last couple of seasons. I think he's a really good player.
You'll be there with Bruce Miller in the commentary box for that one, which kicks off at 3 o'clock, and that's our main featured game tomorrow. Also a National One, league leaders Kelso host Biggar, and they have a game in hand, of course, over Ayr, with both clubs on 53 points in the table. Here's Director of Rugby, Neil Hinnigan.
Good to get back to business this Saturday against Biggar. Biggar, before Christmas, were in really good form. I think they'd won 4 or 5 of their last games, and not only that, Biggar are always a tough game. And yeah, we won. We got a bonus point at Biggar at Hartree Mill, but it was one of those games where right until the last 15 minutes it could have went either way. And it's a team we really respect a lot. Very big pack, and it'll be a fair old scrap, especially in the conditions probably will be. So. We're under no illusions what's coming. We know it's going to be difficult. I've openly played things down up till Christmas, and I think that was the correct thing. We weren't, we didn't know exactly how good or bad we were going to be this season. We had planned to do what we're doing, but things don't always work out that way, and thankfully so far they have. And we've laid it down to the players that if they want to continue this, then there is no other game apart from Biggar on Saturday. Nothing down the line matters unless they win on Saturday. So we've really got to get off to a good start and get back at it. But because we respect Biggar so much, we know that outcome we might not get the outcome we want. But if we play to our strengths and we play well and everybody's on it, then we believe we will get the result we're looking for. But it's a big month. We've got Biggar, then Stumel, and then we're away to Highland, which will be massive. And then we have a resurgent Gala coming to Poinder at the end of the month, so things will be a lot clearer by the end of January. Obviously Melrose have got to play Ayr this month, and Watsonians play Ayr, and so on and so on. So there's lots of ramifications that could present itself this month. So it's a huge month for every club. One's at the bottom and one's at the top, and yeah, things will get mapped out this month, so we really need to be on it. Team selection wise, it's pretty settled to what it was before. We still are missing Keith McNeil, Liam Herdman, and we do have a couple of potential illnesses. There is obviously a bug going about, and a lot of people are suffering from different forms of flu and whatnot. So we're no different. We've got a couple of guys that are maybe just nursing through that. They might make it, they might not. But overall, we're not in a bad place that way, and that would certainly never be an excuse for this week. We must be on it, and boys must be really, really up for it. And if they have aspiration and ambition, this is a game they must win.
So he's finally admitted it, that he's been playing things down.
Yeah, Neil Hindsight Hinnigan. He's been playing things down. I think he's been reading Sir Alex Ferguson's autobiography as well, because he's thrown a lot of mind games out there as well, with obviously the fixtures that they've got coming up in terms of Stu Mel and a resurgent Gala. Again, I've said about Kelso, they're another team I've enjoyed watching play this season. They've played a really good rugby. They've got a depth of squad there. They're a club which is oozing character, I think, just now. They're really, I'm really chuffed that they're up towards the top of National 1. I would hate at this point to be sitting here at the end of the season with Ayr getting promoted, and that's not because I'm just for the Borders, but I think that Kelso, probably more so, over the way that they've been able to stabilise their club over the last few years, would deserve a little crack up in the Premiership. So hopefully they can get a win this weekend. Biggar, as they've said, is a difficult game. They're a robust team. They're very attritional up front, a lot of experienced heads, but they are at Poynter Park, and they've got the upper hand in terms of that they've won away from home. So it's a big game. But I'm sure Kelso will start that as slight favourites.
OK, and Gala also at home tomorrow. They'll be playing Dundee. Player coach Ewan Dodds looks ahead to this one.
We're under no illusions of the task and know that we need to be at our absolute best to produce a win at the weekend. The team remains pretty stable from the victory versus Melrose, and the guys are going out there and they look forward to get back to league business and hopefully get us back on winning ways in the league.
So, short and simple, but straight to the point. Ewan Dodds.
Yeah, his battery must be draining on his phone. He's obviously trying to conserve that. But he's a player who has got a lot of experience. He's played terrifically as a young member of the Gala squad. Went away to Watsonians. He's represented the district in the south. He's a really talented rugby player, and it's great to see him back at Gala. Obviously in difficult times, in difficult circumstances, but having the likes of him and Craig Dodds there to try and steady the ship after the absence of Stuart Johnson, it's good to see. And that's, again, in terms of Gala, it's good to have Gala guys there, just leading the charge and trying to steady the ship and try and look towards next season, because you would imagine now that that's what they're probably going to be aiming towards.
But certainly a big confidence booster for the whole squad, getting that win against Melrose in that way.
Yeah, because it was an emphatic win. It wasn't just the fact that it was a close win to, get a little bit of revenge after their heavy defeat in the league. The league game itself was excellent from Melrose, but equally the same for Gala. When they played the Waverley Cup game, there's changes in personnel, but that doesn't matter because the scoreline still reflects Gala versus Melrose. I'm a true believer in that. But it was a great performance, a really good solid performance, and you can see now the little ideas that are starting to bring in. We heard from his first, Ewan Dodds, from his first little snippet when he was, in helping out coaching. You could see he wanted change. There was frustration in his voice that the change, he wanted to implement that change quickly. It just wasn't able to happen because of the weather. Now we can see what they're trying to do, and hopefully they can, start to kind of galvanise themselves and get some results, because they were all guns blazing in the first few games.
OK, let's look at the Premiership. An unbeaten Hawick are heading to Fullerton Park to take on Mar, which hasn't been a happy hunting ground for them in recent times, as we'll hear now from Greens head coach Matty Douglas.
I remember looking at the fixtures when they came out pre-season, and this one stood out. After New Year, away at the Prem champions, always going to be a tough game, no matter what the league standings or anything like that. So, look, Mar are a top side. They won last season's Premiership. Maybe had a shaky start to the season, but they've won their last 5 or 6, and they'll be full of confidence, and we're at the top of the league. Everybody's chasing us, everybody wants to beat us, and it's got to be no different on Saturday. Last season we struggled twice there, especially in the playoff, just coming up short. So you never dwell on things that have happened, but it probably has been a little bit of a driver at training this week, that we know what's coming, we know what to expect, and it's about us and how we deal with it and how we perform. We feel if we can get our set piece where it's been the last couple of months and get a platform to play off. Look, we've got a strong bench this week as well, so we're looking to try and keep that consistency performance again through the 80 minutes like we did against Aki. So that's a challenge again this week, and we just need to make sure we get the little things right. And 5 league games left, everybody's vying for a playoff spot, so it's up to us to keep the performances up to a high standard and look to pick up as many points in January as we can and see what happens at the end of it. Home semi-final, it's a must for us now, and it's the pressure of making sure we get that. Team news couple of changes for the Accies game. Front row stays the same, so Sean Muir, Fraser Rennick, Nicky Little. Sean Fairbairn comes in for Dalton Redpath to join Daniel Sudden in the middle row, and in the back row is Connor Sutherland, Callum Rennick and Stuart Graham. Comes in for Jay Linton, who's away on holiday for a couple of weeks. Obviously a big blow to have Jay missing, but Stuart Graham is a top class player as well, so he'll just slot in there. In the back line, one change, in comes Hector Patterson for Gareth Welsh. Ronan McKean could be a late fitness test through illness, but we'll just have to see how he goes. On the bench, Matty Carrier returns, Tom Hope, Ross Graham, Dalton Redpath and Bailey Donaldson make up the bench. So strong, settled squad, and challenge this week is to put a performance in, away from home against the current Prem champions, and hopefully come back down the road with the points.
That's a strong team.
It is a really strong team, and I think that you look at that bench, they're going 4-1. They've got 4 really good forwards on the bench. Obviously the one back in Bailey Donaldson, who's more of a they can move it about, they can move the backs around. But this game, Matty Douglas alluded to it there in terms of it's not been a great place. They were close there in the semi-final and the playoffs, but ultimately coming up short. And I feel this game now is more about how Hawick approach it and how they react, because really going away to Mar over the last couple of times they've played, the Mar have been the favourites. They've had the strong squad, they've been going into it with momentum, and Hawick are unbeaten. They're going into it with the momentum now, playing a lot of really good rugby. It's built off that platform of their forwards. They've got such a good forward pack, one of the strongest forward pack in the league by far, in the bench as well. They've got players like Dalton Redpath on the bench that can come on. He's a phenomenal player, but the players that are starting ahead of him are equally as good. The loss of Jay Linton's a big blow, but Stuart Graham, as Matty Douglas has said, is equally as capable of putting in a good shift for them. But I think it's more about Hawick's reaction here as opposed to how Mar approach it, because they've had a sticky season. It's difficult up there at Mar, but yeah, it depends how they approach this game and shake the cobwebs from previous fixtures that they've had.
Hawick have had big wins over Curry away and Edinburgh Accies at home as well, and they'd love nothing more than to go to Fullerton and silence what is usually a very big crowd there, a very passionate crowd.
Yeah, in terms of club rugby, obviously there's a lot of changes in the landscape of rugby in Scotland as it is. We went up and covered the semi-final, and it was a great advert for Scottish club rugby. It was a really partisan crowd. The Mar locals, they all get round the club, they like a drink, they like shouting at the team, they like shouting at the opposition team as well. So, it's a real difficult atmosphere to go into. Matty Carrier, actually, one of the young members of the side, actually called him Humpty Dumpty when he was going to throw into the line out. So, they like to try and wind up the opposition, but I think Hawick go into it with their chests out this time. They're not going into it trying to upset the odds. They're going into it with momentum, with confidence, and I think it really does put a marker down. The big win against Curry is a huge one, but it puts a marker down to say, look, we're not kind of one-trick ponies. We didn't get to this position by luck. We've got to it through hard work, good rugby, and drive. And I think that if they go in with that attitude, they'll maintain their unbeaten run. Well,
Matty was saying, obviously, that Mar have been on a good run as well, and they're just creeping away. I mean, they could actually go top 4, back into the top 4, with a win against Hawick tomorrow.
I think it would be great if Mar did get themselves into that position where they could fight for their title again, because really they should be out of the equation. But they are in with a chance of sneaking into the playoffs, and everybody knows what you need to do to win the Premiership title. You need to finish in the top 4 and then win your next 2 games. But Mar, for having a disjointed season, a sticky season after what was their ultimate success, last year, it still makes the Premiership really interesting. And then you throw into the mix Hawks, Selkirk, Edinburgh Accies. You would say that now Curry and Hawick are away, but there's a lot of rugby still left to be played, and each team that I've just mentioned there are in different bits of form.
Selkirk, of course, incredibly still unbeaten away from home, and they visit GHA tomorrow in good spirits. But can they pull another trick out of the hat on the road? Well, here's head coach Scott White.
Christmas break, it probably came at a great time for us in terms of we're carrying a few niggles within the squad. So, it's great that obviously the boys have now been able to kind of dust them off, and but we've had a fair bit downtime. And we returned, probably the first time we've actually trained together as a whole squad would be Tuesday night. So, it was great to obviously get boys back in. Really positive session, and obviously we go on the road to GHA this week we realise obviously the league's now starting to get fairly tight round about 3, 4, 5. So as I said to the boys on Tuesday night, we've kind of still in control of our own destiny. And you look at the last 5 league games, 3 away, 2 at home. I know we've got a chance. There's no question about it. But it's important that we probably get back to basics. We get back to basics on Saturday, and I think coming out the back of the New Year kind of window, where there's not been any games, and then also the 2 weeks prior to Christmas the games being cancelled, is probably going to be the team that I dare say makes the least amount of mistakes. There'll be some rustiness in there from everybody. That's both teams, no question about that. And I think it'll be whoever takes their chances will will win. Team wise this week, Luke Petty will return, which is great. So it'll be Luke, Bruce Riddle, Zen. Front row, middle row will be James Head, partnered by, we're still kind of probably deciding there, but obviously we've got Donald Nicol returning this week, which is great, but also Callum Turnbull and Andrew Cochrane. So they'll make up kind of the middle row. In the back row will be Scott McClymont and Munro Job, along with one of the 3 before. 9 Jack Hamilton, 10 Aaron McComb, 12 Craig Jackson, 13 Ryan Cottrell. The wings will be Josh Welsh, Lachlan Ferguson, and Callum Anderson will return at fullback as well. So we're close to being full strength in terms of probably the key guys that are missing. Probably Andrew McComb, he's really stepped up to the plate this year in terms of taking a real leader role in around the line out and stuff, and I thought his performance had been excellent, along with kind of Mr. Versatility Ross Nixon. He's unavailable this weekend, but look, we're in a good place. We obviously like away from home as well. We're not being beat on the road yet, so it's everybody's looking forward to it and getting rugby back underway.
Scott White of Selkirk. Scott, of course, will be leaving the club at the end of the season, hoping that he can get Selkirk into the playoffs, but they've still got to play Mar, Edinburgh Accies and Curry, so they need a win tomorrow to set them up for that challenge ahead.
The 3 teams that you mentioned there, they're vying for that playoff spot as well, but to get in towards that mix, they need to be beating GHA, and GHA are down the bottom there with the Jed Forest, Heriots and Musselburgh, who are trying to scrap to get any point to stay in the division. Obviously Musselburgh beat Selkirk in one of the last games last year, so it makes it more interesting because there's only 8 points separate those teams at the bottom. GHA will be trying to get anything, especially being at home, do anything to try and get that win, and depending on the result between Hawick and Mar, it could be a different looking table by the end of the day.
Well, Scott White is going to be teaming up with Lewis Carmichael at Southern Knights, with Alan Tate, not officially announced as head coach yet, but let's say he's pretty much hot favourite to be steering the ship when things resume soon on the Super 6 front. What have you heard on the Super 6 front? Because there's lots of rumblings around about another couple of teams being added and extending across the border to play some English teams possibly, something the RFU have kind of denied and the clubs have said no, that's not happening. So we're still very much sort of in the dark, but clearly there's effort going on to upgrade the Super 6.
Yeah, I think I've probably heard the same things. I've heard that there's potentially going to be 2 teams added and some guys. I don't know what the guys is. I don't know where they're going to be located or what the format of it is. I haven't heard the cross-border competition. I've heard that they're potentially looking at having a similar structure as they did last year with a sprint in a league. So out with that, I think that bringing 2 teams in is going to benefit it. I think it's a shame to see Scott White leave Selkirk, and that's just from a Selkirk point of view. I think that he's done a great job. Had a difficult season last season with all the injuries they had, but I think you can really see what he brings as a coach, and his knowledge and understanding, his man management as well. I do see a little bit of a different culture at Selkirk in terms of the way that they approach their rugby, and that goes to the job that Scott White's been doing down there. I think it's been really good. So whoever Selkirk getting after that as well is going to be an interesting talking point. But yeah, I'm sure he'll do a great job at Southern Knights. But the Super 6, if it's going to be the Super 8, we don't know. But it certainly needed something. It needed a different slant, because the same teams playing each other, as we've mentioned before, does become a bit monotonous, especially when you had 2 teams who were head and shoulders above everybody else with Watsonians and Ayrshire Bulls. But yeah, it remains to be seen, and I don't know when an announcement will be, because they'll be going into pre-season soon.
Well, of course, they've got these two matches in the Doddie Weir Trophy against Newcastle Falcons on the 4th and the 11th, one at the Green Yards and then one at Kingston Park. Do you think they'll be able to get more local people involved in the Southern Knights?
I think so, and I think that comes down to Scott White. It's always been difficult to try and get players from the Borders to buy into another club. It's also been difficult a lot of the time for other coaches in the same region to go out to other clubs. We've seen a lot more of it probably in the last 10 years than we have before that. Selkirk are the second best team in the Borders, so he's got a pick of some of the best players in the region at his own club at the moment. Now, why isn't Ryan Cottrell, Aaron McComb, those players will be getting looked. Craig Jackson's obviously been an ex-Southern Knight. Would he go back? These players are good players in their own right. Would they want to then follow Scott White and have a little stab at it, see what they can do there? That also then, filters around the other clubs. Hoyk have had a couple of players move already. Sudden and Dalton Redpath went and played Southern Knights, then went back to their own club. They've had a shot. Other Hoyk players might want to go and have a go again. Scott White might have different ideas to terms of like Andrew Mitchell, and there might be players playing for likes of Peebles and Gala that he can attract. I think Scott White is going to be crucial to the success of the Southern Knights going forward.
So we'll be following that with great interest over the coming months. Well, let's go back to the Premiership again and a vital match at the bottom end of the table. Heriots in 9th, taking on Jed Forest in 8th. 4 points separating the two sides. Should have been 2, but the Nails had 2 points deducted because they used more than their allowed quota of Super 6 players in a game. So a vital match for both sides. Here's Jed head coach Andrew Brown.
For us, it's a must-win game. We've spoke sort of over the last sort of few weeks with the squad and everything that we've been through our difficult patch. We had in November, end of October, we played Curry, and then we had Hoyk and Selkirk twice. We knew that November was going to be a challenge, and we knew it was going to be difficult for us. The Hoyk and the Selkirk game were extremely competitive, and we know we can compete. So we went into December knowing that we'd had our tough spell behind us, and we were targeting these games. Sadly, obviously, the weather was against us, so I haven't quite made up my mind whether or not the break's a good thing or a bad thing. I suppose we'll know more on Saturday, but the one thing it does do is anybody with any niggles is available. There's no knocks, and I think for the first time this season we've got everybody is available and fit. Certainly, these next sort of 5 games, this little sprint to the end is going to be huge for us. But we had a good win out last time at Hawks. We showed loads of character to get that win deep into injury time. And not with our first select 15, I would have said. There was a few boys unavailable, a few knocks and everything. So it was great to see. Yeah, Heriots this weekend, obviously a different challenge. The boys haven't played rugby for a month, but we've been training really hard. Worked really hard over Christmas, and the boys, there's real good feeling in camp, and they're eager to get back. So loads of headaches, selecting the team this week when everyone's available. It makes life a lot harder, but a great problem to have. So Harry Meadows is back fit again after his wrist injury, so that's good to see him back and available. Obviously, Grant Paxton and Paulo Ferreira performing out and out performers each week at loose head and tight head, and then and joined with Finlay Scott, who's just whose work rate's just immense. He's a massive asset with the boot on the park. In the second row, Clark Skeldon skips the team with Matthew Atkinson beside him, and then the back row, Blake Roth at open side, Gary Young at 6, and Ben Fotheringham at 8. In the back line, Aidan Bambrick, another bright prospect who's done really well and just sort of grown as the season's gone on and got better and better. He's doing really well. Gary Munro at 10, with Robbie Houston at 12, Gregor Young at 13, Mason Cullen and Robbie Gibb on the wings, and Callum Young will be at fullback. The bench, John Story will be 16, Harry Meadows 17, Ben McNeil will be back 5 cover, and then there'll be Lewis Young and Owen Cranston will fill the last spot on the bench.
So a big game for both teams at Golden Acre, and a big match for Musselburgh too, away at Enbrackies, local derby for them. These 2 games are really on the radar.
Yeah, I think they're big, especially as well. GHA have got Selkirk, and those 4 teams at the bottom, you could make a case for them all picking up a win. The Edinburgh derbies themselves have been difficult to predict this season so far, because Enbrackies were all guns blazing and then Heriots actually beat them. So there's nothing to say that Musselburgh can't do the same. but they've all got something to play for. The table. I'm not going to pretend that I know this off the top of my head. The table's in front of me, and you look at it, and every single team still have something to play for. And I think that's the beauty of this league, the Premiership just now, is the fact that it is so competitive. You look at Musselburgh beating a team in the playoffs, it upsets that, but they still maintain a little position in there. Mar and Hawks just in there as well, just in behind. There's so much still to play for in this league, and it's going to be a big weekend in Premiership action, I think, in terms of how the results go.
And this is where 10-team leagues for next season, right across the board, across 5 divisions, is going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I think so. Although the counter-argument for that is the fact that National 1 over the last couple of years has been, this season and last season, has been the most exciting league in Scottish rugby. Maybe the argument could be made for the Premiership this season, but in terms of National 1, a 12-team league, but the teams at the bottom, you look Grammer and Stumel, they're cast adrift at the moment of the other teams. So yeah, it does make it a little bit more competitive, a little bit more interesting, and certainly the teams that can maintain a little bit of form throughout. It's not as much of an arduous task in terms of if you get some injuries or there's events on that you lose a couple of members of your squad, because all the squads are pretty thin in National Rugby. But yeah, it should give us another slant in terms of exciting national action with 10-team leagues.
So it's going to be a cracker at Golden Acre. It's going to be Heriots against Jed Forest. It kicks off at 2 o'clock, so we'll be bringing you first half commentary on that one with Robin Purdy and Sam Matthews down at Golden Acre. So we'll be on air half an hour earlier tomorrow at 1:30, and for the next couple of weeks as well. Obviously, we'll bring you right up to speed on the second half during our Melrose versus Ayr coverage. So 2 games for you tomorrow that we're focusing on in particular. Well, let's go into National 2, and Peebles, currently in 4th position, are away at Dumfries, and let's hear from head coach Ian Chisholm.
It feels like ages since our last game. We earmarked January as a really key period for us. If we want to stay in the hunt and we want to do any damage in that too, if we can get through January, either winning all our games or picking up points in all of our games, we feel we'll be in a really good position come the end of the season. It's really not to our benefit for any more games to be cancelled. At the moment, we're playing well into the sevens, and look, we as a club want to have a go at the sevens this year and try and win a bit of respect and be competitive. So look, we're really hopeful that this game will go ahead at the weekend. We know a lot about Dumfries. They're very forward orientated. They make their forwards work really hard. We've spent the last wee while talking about focusing on ourselves. We played some brilliant rugby when Dumfries came to visit us early in the season. It was a dry track. We had very few injuries at the time, so we've been just previewing this game by showing highlights of what we could do. Not an awful lot changes in terms of our KPIs. We want to keep the tempo of the game high. We want to move the ball about regardless of the weather. The technical aspect of the game changes when the weather's like this, and look, there will be times where we have to kick to miss out the middle third. But for us, we want to make sure that we're really challenging Dumfries, especially their forward pack's lungs and their legs. And then come that last 30 minutes, 20 minutes of the game, we believe that our conditioning will bring us through, and we believe that if we're disciplined enough to stick to the game plan, we'll come away with points. And look, the big focus again for us is the performance, and if we get the performance right, meet all our measurables, then we will be in and around there to come away for Dumfries with a result. This weekend's squad, our starting front row is Willie Aitken, John Napier and John Gray. Cameron Pye and Ross Brown come into the second rows. Our back row is made up of Jay Coltman, Rob Harrison and Finlay Collins. Our half-backs at the moment are Donald Anderson and Ian Chisholm. Our back three is James Dow on one wing, Buster Davidson on the other wing, and Davy Collins at 15. And Jack Harrison and Frey McKeever make up the centres. On the bench, look, we've named a really, really strong bench. We're going to have to soak up a lot of pressure in that first 20 minutes. And if we can do that, and we can bring the boys that we usually start on after that 20-minute, 30-minute mark, we think we can really twist the thumb and get them under pressure then. So we have Andrew Muir, Neil Hogarth and Lewis Copeland and Murdo Anderson on the bench. Excited about this weekend. I'm excited about the rhythm and flow that we're in, and I'm excited about how we attacked the Christmas period there, where we had 4 weeks, 12 sessions essentially, where the boys worked really hard and they've really bought into where we wanted to go with this, so hoping for a really good result.
As he says, it's vital Peebles get a really good January under their belts, because they've slipped down from first place to fourth.
Yeah, I think the results sometimes have been hard to predict, but they were in the hunt, and they were obviously they've slipped down a couple of places, but they've got a really young squad. You listen to that back row; they're all really young individuals, and a lot of young players in that pack, in that back division. And you would imagine that experienced halfback pairing of Donald Anderson and Ian Chisholm will help guide the team. They've mentioned about the experienced bench that they've got, and Andrew Muir and Neil Hogarth in particular are really experienced players. Murdo Anderson as well can play forwards and backs, so it gives them that little bit of flexibility. But Dumfries is a difficult place to go. They were a team that you would have probably made a case for in terms of promotion this season, but things have not went well for them. But Peebles need to get a result. It's you feel if they get another couple of bad results in January, as Ian Chisholm says, that they could potentially be playing for next to nothing and just trying to see out to the end of the season. But that's not what Ian Chisholm wants. That's not what Peebles want. They certainly want to be up there and challenging Glasgow Accies, because you'd imagine they're going to pick up 5 points against Hamilton this weekend. So they're the team to catch, and Peebles are looking to hunt them down.
And his concern, of course, about games stretching into April as well. It's a big concern.
Yeah, that probably comes back to your point about the 10-team leagues. Hopefully that helps, because Sevens Rugby is such a huge part of our identity as a rugby community in the Borders. And it's good to hear Ian Chisholm, another player who's won oodles and oodles of Sevens trophies in his time, and it's great to see him bring that culture to Peebles as well, in terms of saying they won't have a crack, because they've got a lot of young, hungry, good rugby players down there, and you feel that a Sevens competition they could show up well in, and they don't want to be hindered by competing on two fronts and diminishing the competition as well, because if Peebles are playing 15s, then they're probably looking at withdrawing from tournaments, which is nobody wants that. So hopefully we get a run of weather, Peebles get a run of games, and it's not too much of an issue comes 7th time.
Well, also in National 2, the game Mickey Yanotta will be covering for us at Scremerston. Berwick hosting Boroughmuir, and Berwick head coach is Colin Young.
It seems a long time since our last league game away to Newton Stuart, which wasn't our finest hour or finest performances, unfortunately, due to the long break, whether there's been weather or the festivities. We've managed to bring back a couple of players this weekend, just due to long injuries, which was James Thompson, who's returning from a hand injury, and Ali Greaves returning with a knee injury. So nearly up to full strength. A couple of people still away on holiday. Ian Thompson, Rory Hindhoff went skiing in the middle of rugby season, which was very handy for us, obviously. But we'll look forward to welcoming Boroughmuir, which is Ladies' Day at the club, so there will be probably about 150 women there. I don't know how much rugby they'll come out and watch, but I know the boys are always looking forward to the after party with the ladies in the clubhouse afterwards, where they'll all be auctioned off for charity.
Yeah, we should explain that, shouldn't we? They're not actually being auctioned off. Yeah. I think each player gets to be serving a particular table on the night.
What happens over the border stays over the border. All right, what Berwick get up to is up to them.
Tremendous. But so there we are. Colin not very happy about the skiers.
He's obviously not had a good Christmas, has he? He's obviously not had a good time. I get it. I understand his frustration. However, I don't agree with it, because rugby is different now. It used to be such a, it was the be all and end all of a man's life in the Borders, and you never done anything. There was no weddings, there was no ski trips, there was no holidays, there was no work. You would never work on a Saturday. But it's different times, and I get his frustration. I completely do, and he's obviously said that, being really frustrated. However, the two guys are away enjoying themselves skiing in this little break, and much to the frustration of Colin Young. But however, Berwick still have a game to play, and they're going to be playing Boroughmuir, and they showed up quite well at Meggetland earlier on in the season. It was the scoreline probably doesn't reflect that, but it was one of their early games in terms of their reintroduction to National 2, and they competed well, and you would imagine it on home soil that they can, with the personnel that they've got, especially Ali Grieve coming back with his experience, they've got personnel there that can certainly cause Boroughmuir some problems, and they'll be looking to pick up a victory, because Boroughmuir as well are low in confidence as well, sitting in 11th place. So it's a big game for Berwick in terms of picking up some points, they'll miss the two guys that are away skiing, but yeah, they've still got a job to do, and they've still got to try and beat Boroughmuir to claw up the league.
And it's been a strange season for them because two of their defeats have been to the two bottom clubs, Boroughmuir, as we mentioned, and Hamilton. But a real chance for them to get back to winning ways at home. And you look at the table there, you've got it in front of you at the moment. 5 teams going down and 4 clubs on 26 points between 6th and 9th position. A real scrap there for survival. Below them, there's an 11-point gap to Cartha, a further 4 to Boroughmuir, and another 2 to Hamilton. So those 3 would be favourites to go through the trapdoor as it stands at the moment, but another 2 clubs will join them from, you would think, Kirkcaldy, Berwick, Lasswade, Dumfries and Preston Lodge, all in the mix at the moment, and a horrendous thing for all the teams knowing that there's 5 going down from 12.
Yeah, you look at that, obviously down from 5th to 12th, they're all quite closely knit, and it's important that you win your home games and you keep a bit of form at home. So it makes the game this weekend very, very important for Berwick, because they need to pick up 4 or 5 points to try and claw themselves up the league. But sometimes it's a contrast of style. Peoples have found it going tough against the likes of Boroughmuir and Hamilton, and Berwick, as you say, they've found it difficult against those 2 teams as well. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But at the end of the season, it's going to be they might look back and think that, if that game passed them by, that one slipped through the net. But home form is going to be really important for them, and it's something that Berwick have notoriously over the last few years done really well with.
Okay, into East League 1, Duns are at home to Haddington, while in Division 2, Langham are on the road at Pennycook, still unbeaten. Hoyt Lindeen, they're still looking for their first win of the season in East 2. They face Dunbar at home, and Gary Alexander from the club is looking ahead to this one.
We were up there at the end of November and lost 41-24. It was a game we were always behind, but we managed to stay in there right to the end, and probably should have scored with the very last play of the game, which would have made the end result a lot closer. So we'll have to play as well as we can, and as we continue to seek that first league win of the season. We nearly got it the following week when we played Dalkeith at the Volunteer. That was the beginning of December. We lost 23-16. Just missed a few chances when if we'd taken them, we might have got a win that we're desperately looking for. However, we didn't. So hopefully we can take the good points out of the 2 performances that I mentioned into this Saturday, and we welcome Dunbar and thank them for changing to 3 o'clock. With Hoyk Youth also being at home. So anybody that's wanting a feast of rugby this Saturday, get yourself to the Volunteer and you'll see 2 games.
And in East 3, Hoyk Harlequins are still unbeaten in the league despite being in second in the table, but they've got games in hand over league leaders Edinburgh Northern. Let's bring in Quinn's Adam Hall.
Yeah, we're looking forward to getting back into league action. It's been a fairly extended Christmas break for us. It's been about a month since we last played, so yeah, we can't wait to get back and get back into the swing of things. We've quite a few unavailable, being a trip to Edinburgh this weekend. We've got a few work commitments, childcare commitments, and a few other unavailabilities, so it'll be a fairly thin squad going to Inverleith, but still we hope good enough to get a result and get back on track in the league.
Adam Hall and Hugh Brown will be at Inverleith for that match tomorrow. Well, finally today, Kelso Ladies, the Borders' other unbeaten team, travel on Sunday to Corstorphine to face Corstorphine's second 15, and hopefully that match will take place. They've won 4 out of 4 so far, and they've been awarded the other 4 matches by default, so they're top of the table. Here's Kelso Ladies skipper Donna Borthwick.
So this weekend we travel away to Corstorphine. We've played them before at home, right at the very start of the season, and it was a really close game against the 2 of us. They're a really strong team, and although they're the seconds team for Corstorphine, they've got some really good talent in that team. So we're looking forward to going up there this time and seeing what they've got this time, but we were also offering new people in our team because they weren't available for the first game, because it was the first game after the summer break. So we've got new centre partnerships of Barbara Watson, who's the vice captain, and Nicola Turnbull, who's going to try it out in the backs for the first time. But they're really strong, powerful runners, so we're looking forward to seeing what they've got to offer, and we're really confident that they'll be able to break through the defence of Corstorphine and they won't be able to handle them. We've got Lee Johnston back in the front row, so she brings a lot of power to the front row as well. Her and Jane Jackson together will be really strong in the front row. And we've got a new player, Hannah. She's playing hooker, and she's been working really hard the last few months as hooker and for throwing in at line out. So she's really looking forward to getting stuck in, and we're looking forward to seeing what she's got to offer as well. She's a really good player. So the game after this we've got on the 22nd is against Lismore, and that's away as well. That'll be our last game of the season, where we're hoping to beat them too, and then we'll be undefeated this season. Then we've got the cup games coming up, taking us into like April, mid-April. We're hoping to do really well in the cup games. It'll be a challenge for us because we'll be playing Nat 1 teams. So it'll be good for us to see where we're at, because if we're undefeated in this league, we want to see where we're at for maybe promotion for next year. But we'll be playing a playoff against, it looks like, Dundee first team if we win our league, just to see who wins the league overall. So that'll be a good game too, and we're hoping to come away with a win from that too, because we do have a really strong team and we do have a lot of new players, but a lot of them are just returning from rugby from taking a break out. Some of them are like 5 years, some of them are like even like 20-year breaks from rugby, and they've decided that they want to come and give it a go again. So we're really excited for them, and it's just getting our fitness levels back up, and after this long break of not having any games, and it's getting used to taking a tackle again and used to playing together again as a team. But we are really excited to be playing, and we're really hoping that it goes ahead, because these long breaks and in between games and teams calling off can be really demoralising. And you know, like, people are coming to training and they're working really hard at training, and our coach Ailey, she's been putting us through our paces and stuff, and if we don't have games, and it's quite hard to keep people motivated and keep people coming to training. But we are looking forward to the end of the league and starting the cup and going for promotion maybe next year.
Donna Borthwick, and that's just about it for today. Don't forget Borders Rugby Radio coming to you live from the Green Yards tomorrow at the earlier time of 1:30. Bring you 3.5 hours of live rugby coverage, including Melrose against Ayr and Heriots versus Jed Forest. Hope you can join us then, but from Dale and me, bye-bye for now.